I'm grateful for the attendance of not only the members of the two committees for this joint committee hearing, and there will be others coming in for members of the audience. People will be coming in and out during the pendency of the committee, and that is a byproduct of their having other meetings in the Capitol at this time. But it does not speak to their interest in your testimony or their interest in the subject matter that they will be discussing. Oftentimes members will just need to come in and out, and I just want to let people know that. When you come up for members of the panels that will be called by the chairs, when you come up, if you can just state your name and your affiliation for the record, that would be helpful. I am grateful to the members who are not on this committee who are taking an interest, or on these committees who are taking an interest in the subject matter. It has been the subject of a lot of media coverage. I know I, for one, have been receiving a lot of calls from constituents about what the state's role is and what sort of values we need to be articulating as the state of Texas during the influx of asylees and migrants to the state of Texas. So we have seen an uptick during the last year of migrants seeking refuge on our southern border, and collectively, I know we understand that steps must be taken and are being taken to address this, but I also hope that all of us, regardless of party, can agree on a common set of values, and these values will stem from sort of our moral compass and what we would expect the treatment would be for our families if we were similarly situated or in a similarly difficult situation, and that is that children should not be dying in either federal or state custody, that children should not be abused, neglected, or held in inhumane conditions regardless of their citizenship status, and then finally that families belong together. And if we can start from that baseline of shared values and understanding, I think that we can, on a bipartisan basis, make progress on this issue. I think we can also agree that the federal government has failed to do its job, and that is not a partisan statement. It is just a statement of fact. In fact, the last major immigration overhaul that occurred was President Reagan's Amnesty Act of 1986, almost 30 years ago. And for the young people in the audience who work here at the Capitol, you were probably not even born back in 1986, but that's the last time Congress or an administration has acted on immigration reform. Now, I also want to contextualize what is happening today and offer you some history about the varying levels of asylees or migrants that are arriving at our southern borders. In 2018, the number of apprehensions did not surpass the influx that we experienced in 2013 or 2014, right? So oftentimes you will see in the popular media that we are having a huge increase, but to put it in the proper context, we need to understand that increase at the southern border does not even rise to the levels that we saw in 2013 or 2014. And furthermore, just overall immigration is lower today than the number of apprehensions that we saw at the southern border from 1977 to 2008. We saw last month a 30% decrease in crossings. Usually that's attributable to the heat during summer months, but we have been seeing, at least most recently, a decrease. 40% of all the individuals that were apprehended at the southern border in 2018 were families or unaccompanied minors, compared to about 10% 6 years earlier. And in 2019, that same figure is 65%. So 65% of the people who are coming across the southern border are children and families. Many of them are simply turning themselves over to Customs and Border Protection and placing themselves into custody, seeking asylum. I'd also like to go a little further back in history for context, and that is during the period of the Great Migration into the United States from 1905 to 1910, there were almost 5 million immigrants who came to America through Ellis Island. These immigrants and asylum seekers were primarily Italians, Irish, and Polish families, many Jews among them. who are coming to this country under similar circumstances, fleeing famine, fleeing violence against them and their families. And many of them were women and children and family units that are coming together, just like today, although today we're seeing much lower numbers. The type of conditions and treatment that are happening are in part because our federal government has pursued certain policies. That is true. But we were not going to wait for the federal government to do its job. We are expressing our Texas values at the local level through our faith-based communities, through our NGOs, through our local and county governments. The city of San Antonio, it is notable, has created a matching program that is supporting families and is acting as a hub. Counties and city governments like in Dallas and many of the other counties that are represented around the Horseshoe today are participating. And these are truly Texas values that we want to project and we want to underscore as part of this hearing. These needs are federal needs. These are the committee here today cannot make immigration courts work any quicker. They cannot grant status to the migrants. But because this is not just immigration but a humanitarian crisis, these committees will explore how we can, through appropriations and providing resources to local communities or otherwise supplementing what the federal government is doing, how we can express our values in the humanitarian effort. And I want to underscore that because a lot of times people say, well, we can't do anything. This is all federal. But in fact, we can. And we have appropriated since 2008 $2.4 billion related to border security. We have appropriated during this last biennium $800 million to border security. And we need some really good thinking among the people on these panels and among our witnesses today about how we can deploy these things to supplement the federal effort and make sure we address this humanitarian crisis appropriately. I also think it's important to highlight just a few more points. And the first one is that during the last 10 months, there have been 7 deaths of migrant children in federal facilities, whether it's ORR, CBP, or ICE. That is unacceptable, and I think all my colleagues here would share that as a baseline value. The Department of Homeland Security has reported disturbing conditions in detention facilities in the Rio Grande Valley and El Paso. Attorneys, physicians, and advocates, some of whom we will hear from today, have reported a lack of access to water, sanitation, basic hygiene, and inadequate food all over the state of Texas. And in addition to these conditions, the administration recently announced in early June that they have cut access to legal representation, education, and recreation for migrant children detained in ORR facilities. There are many other administration policies that are driving the conditions at hand. I want to focus on the state policies and how we can help. And because this is all happening here in Texas, we must change our approach. We must express our sense of propriety and values to this situation and to this humanitarian challenge and opportunity that we face. So I ask our colleagues to look towards our shared values so that we can find sincere solutions on how the state of Texas can support these efforts and help these families and give them the type of care that they need and deserve. I would just say that children's lives are at risk here, and I know we all take it very seriously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.